Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is ShinoDBD, your gaming and ninja, and welcome to this week's episode of Shino's Shrine Picks. Ooh, Shrine Reset and Rank Reset, we got them both going on at the same time. How lucky are we today? Now, as you guys know, during this series, I pretty much go over what's going on in the shrine, what perks are good, what perks they synergize with, and what killers they're good on, things such as that. And then at the end of it, I give you my thoughts on what you should get if you're a killer main, what you should get if you're a survivor main, etc., and which are kind of like my order of operations, or like which one's order of importance for the shrine. That being said, we're going to be doing things a little bit different this time since it is rank reset. I'll be giving you guys some gameplay footage of me using the perks, so it's a little bit more interesting so you can see the perks in action as opposed to just hearing me talk about them. But other than that, we're just going to jump right into it. Alright, first up, the perk we have is Iron Maiden, and this perk is picked up from Legion. What this perk allows you to do is open lockers 30% fast start rank 1, 50% fast start rank 3. It also means if anyone, say, hops into a locker, say to avoid your attack or to hide from you, when they get out of the locker, their area or the location is exposed to you for 14 seconds, and they gain the exposed status effect, meaning they're one-shottable for 15 seconds afterwards. Killers use this really well. Legion can use this well because a lot of survivors will like duck in the lockers to dodge Legion's frenzy attack. Another killer who uses this well is Huntress, mainly for her reload speed, but also the simple fact that if someone does try to hop in a locker to avoid like taking a hatch or taking, an M1 to the face, a lot of people do that. You can obviously turn that away into the exposed one-shot play. And lastly, I think the person, in my opinion, who makes the most out of this is actually Doctor. And it's very common for survivors to hide in lockers to try to avoid Doctor. Basically try to avoid gaining madness or when hiding from him. So having this perk means that when they try to hop into a locker to avoid getting madness, whenever they do get out of the locker, one, you will know exactly where they are, and two, you cannot one-shot them for 15 seconds. Realistically, again, the only person who really uses this perk to for the locker speed is really Huntress. Being able to search lockers is really nice for Huntress because it also affects her reload speed, so it means she reloads her hatchets faster. But again, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion based on the fact that I play Doctor a little bit more and use it on Doctor a little bit more, I think it is really strong in being able to pinpoint where people are when they're trying to avoid your madness. If you've got a really large terror radius and you're using something like Infectious Fright or something like that, it's really hard, if not nigh impossible, for them to avoid you. And the only option they really have in those situations is to go into a locker. So knowing that if they do go into a locker and come out, you know exactly where they are, is super huge, especially late game versus a Doctor if you don't have whispers and they're doing a lot to really avoid you or hide from you during the game. But that's just my thoughts there. Next up on the killer side, we've got Bloodhound, which is a Wraith teachable. Now, personally, if you're new to the game, I'd actually recommend picking this up because I think a lot of people don't really play Wraith that early on. He's actually one of the really strongest, one of the stronger killers to play if you're new to the game, especially playing against other new players. But a lot of people don't necessarily play Wraith right off the bat, and so if you haven't played a lot of Wraith or haven't leveled up Wraith, it's a great way. I think it's a great idea to grab this perk. It's a perk that can be used on multiple killers. It can be used effectively at just about every killer. Basically, before we even get into any of that though, essentially what it does is it makes blood marks easier to see and it makes them last longer. So as of right now, when you hit a survivor and they start bleeding, they usually bleed relatively, I'd say about every 2 to 3 seconds they drop blood, and then those blood marks will last for about 2 to 3 seconds on their own. Using this will increase the time they last at max rank up to about 4 seconds, but also it makes it a much brighter red, so it's a lot easier to see, and it lasts for about 2 to 3 times as long as it normally does. So it becomes really easy to track a survivor that you may have lost. It also becomes really easy to track a survivor that may have given you the slip. And to be fair, it's actually probably one of the hardest counters to Iron Will outside of Strider itself. So being able to track survivors' blood is really good, having it last longer, but also having it be much brighter, so it's a lot easier to see, especially on some of those darker maps or some of those grassier maps, is really huge and really helpful for tracking. I highly recommend it for killers who are learning, who are trying to learn how to track survivors, trying to learn how to catch survivors. One of the most important things when you're super new to the game is learning how to find people. And so being able to see that blood in practice with perks like this, I think are really good. Using sound can be really hard when you're like just getting started at the game. It's a lot easier to just see things with your eyes. So using Bloodhound to help track people down is really good. Perks that I think this synergizes extremely well with. One, the strongest perk I think it synergizes with is Sloppy Butcher. Essentially that perk just makes survivors bleed way more. So it's a lot easier for you to be able to see people if they're bleeding everywhere. It drastically increases the rate that they drop blood, so it makes it a lot easier for you to follow that blood. Other perks that I think it synergizes well with would be Strider. Obviously, if you can hear them, but you don't necessarily know where they're at, having the blood last longer makes it a lot easier to see where it's at. Other perks would be Predator. If like you can follow scratch marks longer, it's a lot easier to pick up the blood trail when the scratch marks drop. And the last thing I think would be, our last two I would say would be Nurse's Calling and Whispers. A lot of times if people are healing, and if they stop healing, and again if they have Iron Will or things like that, you won't be able to hear them, but you can find the blood marks because they can only move so fast to get away from you, and the blood lasting a lot longer will make it a lot easier for you to pick up the trail. And then Whispers, just because it does help you kind of pinpoint their general location, and then all you have to do is look for the bright red blood on the ground if you know they're injured. So I actually do like this perk a lot. I'm not too sure which one I like more, this one or Iron Maiden. I feel like this one probably has a lot more utility for every killer in the game, as opposed to Iron Maiden is a bit more situational and only really strong on certain killers, but we'll get back to my particular choices a little bit later. All right, next up we have Detective's Hunch, which is the first perk on the survivor side. Detective's Hunch, basically what it does is every time you finish a generator, it unlocks your aura reading ability and allows you to basically see the auras of generators, chests, and totems within 32 meters at rank 1 and 64 meters at rank 3, which I actually think is a really strong perk. It actually has a lot of synergies with a lot of other TAPS perks. Detective Tap is who this perk comes with. It also has a lot of really strong synergies with some of Detective Tap's other perks, like Stakeout. The main reason for this is if you're running, say, Stakeout, and you know the killer's kind of searching you, you're using Stakeout to help you get through that first generator. Basically, if the killer has ruin, it helps you get through that ruin even if they haven't. And then after you pop that first generator, having that increased aura reading ability, seeing all the totems in 64 meters will help greatly in basically finding the totem to get rid of the ruin. Another perk this synergizes is great with is obviously going to be Open-Handed, which drastically increases your aura reading ability, so it allows you to be able to see auras much farther away, so you can see things that are important. The last thing I think this does really well is it synergizes really well with maps. So for those of you guys who don't know, maps track basically, or you can use maps to track basically almost every other thing on the map. Hooks, hatches, totems, generators, but you have to get so close to something before you can actually track it. So having the fact that like when the generator pops, basically having the fact that when a generator pops, it automatically tracks everything within a 64 meter of you because you've already seen it, is actually really good if you're running a rainbow map or something like that, so that you don't have to run around the map trying to track everything. It saves you a lot of time, saves you a lot of map, because a lot of times, you know, it does take a while to run 64 meters around a map. It does take a bit of time. So having that, being able to hold a map, pop a generator, and have it track almost everything on the map instantaneously for you, so then you can just look at the map to find where you're going afterwards, is really strong in my opinion. But not too many perks necessarily synergize really well with a particular item or just items in general. This would happen to be one of them, so I think it's pretty good. Okay, lastly, on Survivor side, we've got Botany Knowledge. Botany Knowledge starts at 11% at rank 1 and is 33% at rank 3, and it is a Claudette perk. I think Claudette's probably one of the first survivors you level to begin with, so you may not need to grab this because in my opinion, her or Meg should be one of the first two players that you level to begin with, but in the event that you haven't leveled them and haven't picked this up, I'm going to go over what this perk does. And essentially the two major things this perk does is, one, it makes it so your healing speed is faster by 10, 11, 20, 10, 22 or 33%, but it also means your healing item efficiency is that much stronger as well. So personally, why I recommend this is a lot of people are running self-care, And I don't hate self-care. If you're not already running an item in game, a lot of times what I'll tell people to do is instead of running self-care, run Botany Knowledge and just have a really kitted out medkit. You grab a purple or green medkit and then put extra speed on it or extra charges on it. You can actually get away with not even putting extra charges on it, but do like both the speed add-ons, like say the speed and charges and just like scissors or switchers or whatever for speed, and then run Botany Knowledge. You can usually get anywhere between 3 or 4 heals out of a medkit depending on if it's green or purple. And then on top of that, you're healing way faster. So having the scissors, having the Botany Knowledge, having the tape makes you heal just so much faster when you're using a medkit. But then on top of just being able to heal faster when you're using a medkit, you'll also heal faster when you're healing other players, which is really good for obviously getting yourself back in the game, getting them back in the game. And the reason why I would say even pick this up over self-care is because when you self-care, you're already healing at 50% your normal speed. But if you use a medkit, you're healing at 100% speed, which is the speed that someone else will be healing you. So if you run Botany Knowledge on top of that, you're healing 33% faster than that. So you're almost healing as fast as like almost say having a person and a half, or depending on what speed add-ons you're running, up to almost 2 people healing you at the same time, which is really good for getting yourself back in the game, or even pulling off clutch heals like mid-chase of killers, having moments where they're trying to mind game, you can just stop and start focusing on your heal to pressure them to make a decision to break a pallet or pick a side. And if they don't make that decision quick enough, you might actually be able to get the heal off, which again gives you another health state mid-chase, which makes you a lot stronger and makes you a much bigger threat to killers. So I think this is kind of a perk that's slept on a little bit, similar to like Iron Will. I think it works best when you use the medkit, whether that be purple or green, but I do think it can be relatively strong even by itself. But yeah, that's kind of just my thoughts on Botany Knowledge. Perks it synergies with, obviously self-care. The simple fact that you can, heal yourself and, heal yourself a little bit faster or heal other people faster. It actually doesn't synergize well with We'll Make It 3, but does work really well with We'll Make It 1 and 2. The real reason why it doesn't work really good with We'll Make It is if you're running a perk, you think it worked well with We'll Make It, but the reason why it doesn't work with We'll Make It is because if you have We'll Make It activated, that's actually the fastest a single player is allowed to heal another survivor. So having Botany Knowledge on top of that does not stack the speed any higher. However, if you're running We'll Make It 2 or We'll Make It 1, which I believe is only 25 and 50%, then it is worth running. Botany Knowledge with, because it does increase the speed to get a little bit closer to We'll Make It 3. But outside of that, there's not too many other perks that, like I said, it really synergizes with. It does pseudo synergize with Streetwise. However, I don't necessarily recommend running 2 perks to try to make your health kit to get more out of your health kit, if that makes sense. It just seems a little redundant at that point. I would either choose one or the other. I'd only use Streetwise if I was trying to make an item that wasn't a medkit last longer, and if I was trying to make an item that is a medkit last longer, then I would just use Botany Knowledge. But that's just my personal opinion on that. But yeah, now I guess it's time to get into like which perks I would use and which perks I think are better for which situation, and what are my top 4 picks, if you would. Okay, boys and girls, so I've taken some time to refamiliarize myself with the perks. I played a couple games with each of them just to get a feel of like which ones I like, which ones seem to be more consistent. I give you my opinions on which one I feel like you should grab and why. And we're gonna start first with the killer side of the shrine, which is Bloodhound and Iron Maiden. After using both these perks in a couple of games again, just to refamiliarize myself with them, I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I've got to go with Bloodhound. Bloodhound just is way more versatile as a killer perk. It's way more useful. There's so many situations in which Bloodhound is really useful, even by itself, with or without like any other complementing perks. It's just really strong by itself for tracking survivors, for not losing players and things like that. But also just has such great synergy with so many other perks, whether it's Whispers, Nurse's Calling, Predator, Sloppy Butcher. Having any of those other perks helps you so much, coupled with Bloodhound will help you so much for closing out kills or re-picking up chases that could be lost chases, and just ultimately over like the course of a game will save you so much more time than anything else. I do really like Iron Maiden. The problem with Iron Maiden is it's kind of like, it's almost like Noed, but just not as strong. Like, it's very strong before people know you have it. Once people know you have it, it's not as strong. That's probably why I think the killer it's strongest on is Doctor, in my opinion, simply because he's in a killer situation that would force you to get into a locker. as opposed to like other situations where like you're not. Someone I didn't mention earlier is this does also work really strong in Hillbilly and Nurse if they're running barbecue and chili. A lot of people get in lockers to avoid them and get out. But the problem is outside of those scenarios, like it's just one of those things. Once they know you have it, the gig is kind of up, and it's just, even though it's powerful enough to keep them out of lockers, I don't think it's strong enough to like justify like continuously using. Everything it does relatively well, but there's other perks that do it better. For example, even in my doctor situation where people are going to a locker to avoid going into madness, I can also do that with whispers, just things like that. Again, it's really nice, but it's just not consistent enough and not strong enough on multiple killers. And to be real, outside of like say barbecue and chili, it doesn't really have too many synergies with any other perks. It's nice, it's not bad, like it's not one of those perks that's gonna hinder you in any way, but it's just not really strong enough for me to say like, yo, this is the perk you should get. The one recommendation I would say if you're gonna get it from the shrine is if you weren't planning on buying Legion or you don't plan on playing or leveling Legion, it's a nice perk to use on Huntress, on Hillbilly, on Nurse, and on Doctor, and you can grab it without having to level up Legion, which would be nice if you don't plan on ever playing that killer. Alright, on the Survivor side, this one was a little bit harder. I spent a little bit of time thinking about it, but realistically, as fun as it was to use Detective's Hunch in the games that I use Detective's Hunch, and to be fair, I think when I'm duo queuing, I may give it a shot for finding the hatch. It doesn't say that it tracks the hatch, but in all the games I played, it was way easier to find the hatch using Detective's Hunch than it wasn't. I don't know if that was just a bug or if it's supposed to do that, but I'm gonna give that a shot for a couple games next time I'm doing. But even with that being said, Botany Knowledge was just way more versatile and way more useful. There were so many chases I was in where, because I was running a medkit with speed add-ons and Botany Knowledge, one, not only was I able to get like 3 or 4 heals out of the medkits themselves, which is a lot, especially seeing I wasn't running double extra charge add-ons, but just the simple fact that like I was able, normally when you're looping a killer or when you're mind gaming a killer, when you want him to break the pallet, there's really not too much you can do to pressure him to break the pallet. Like, you can kind of pressure him, but if you're running self-care, you won't heal nearly fast enough. You're really just wasting time. There were so many chases tonight that I was able to like get a full heal off before the killer was able to like catch me, because they kept trying to mind game me and I kept forcing them to take like the least optimal path for them and like break the pallet or whatever by just sitting there and healing. And every time like they didn't like adjust it up properly, I was able to get a full heal off, and then it's basically like a brand new chase for them, which is extremely frustrating for them, but also really great for me as a survivor. I really do think it only got a minor buff, but I think that minor buff actually did a huge thing for it. It's also a hard counter to something like Sloppy Butcher, which a lot of killers are running, both for healing yourself and healing other people. So I personally say, even though I know most people are probably leveling up Claudette first or second, I still say if you don't have Botany Knowledge, pick it up. It's a great pickup from the shrine. Probably like the strongest perk in the shrine, like in general right now. I'd say it's as good as Bloodhound for the killer side, if not better. It's a really good perk, so if you haven't played Claudette, get that perk. But in order of top 4, I'm probably going to go Botany Knowledge, Bloodhound, Detective's Hunch, and then Iron Maiden. Again, I like Iron Maiden, but it's just too situational for me to really call it a good perk or to really rank it above any of these other perks. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's Shino Shrine picks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you don't already know, by the way, I do stream on Twitch just about every night. You can find me, link will be in the description below or floating across the screen right now. But if you want to talk to me about shrine picks, killer picks, builds, or just come kick it, talk about anime or something else I'm going to do a lot of on stream, anything at all going on, internet, streaming, whatever, I love to hang out and see you. But you're more than welcome to come by my stream. Like I said, I stream just about every night, Monday through Friday. Come say hi, I would really appreciate it. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button so you know when I drop more stuff, and I'll see you guys next time, alright? Deuces.